We're talking today about design intelligence, harnessing the possibilities of AI. And we have three incredible speakers who are here to have a conversation, I think, about their work. Each of them sits at the intersection of technology, emerging technology, creativity, art, design, contemporary culture. And so we're going to have a conversation and then open up for questions at the end, I think. So I'll leave that to the team. I'm going to do a quick introduction of all of them, and maybe we'll go one by one so that each of them can give more detail on their work, and they're going to have some presentations. So my name is Suhair, and I'm a big fan of LDF and involved with some of their projects. I have worked in tech for most of my career, and I now run a platform, an incubator called Open-Ended. I have on my right Ali Eslami, who is a director and principal research scientist at DeepMind. Then Kadine James, who is the director of Artificial Rome. And finally, Ben Ditto, who is a creative director and runs Ditto Publishing as well, and is with Days Beauty. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I used to be with Google. It's fine. Just delete. Okay, so I'm going to start off. We're going to go in this order, if that's okay with you guys. We have some of your work lined up for you to share and to talk about, and hopefully in the process of that, or maybe as a starting point, it would be really interesting to learn about your work, what you do, and also why you're sharing what you're going to share with us today. So hand over to you, Ali.
Sure. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for the introduction. I'm an AI research scientist, which means that I try to push the boundaries of AI along with my colleagues. And I've been doing AI since 2005, like before it was cool, basically. And have been really fortunate to kind of see it go from a topic that really nobody knew about and nobody cared about to one where, you know, it's the topic of conversation at dinner parties and so on. And so we've seen this real transformation of the space. And within that space, I've always been interested in getting computers to understand things by themselves. And the process of understanding turns out to be closely linked to the process of generating. That's why you hear the term generative AI so much. So for years, we've been trying to get computers to generate images, to generate audio, to generate text. And the reason we've wanted to do this is because we've wanted them to understand those things, to understand images and audio and text. Yeah, I thought it would be good to kind of provide a historical perspective to the conversation today, to talk about where we've come from, to talk a little bit about where we are, and also where we might go with this tech into the future. So what I thought I would show is a video from my first research paper back in 2011. So that's about 12 years ago. And this, believe me, was state of the art back then. It was presented at the, one of the top conferences, and it was what we could do at the time, and it really was blowing people's minds. So we were trying to model images of horses. We were trying to capture the likeness of a horse, and we were showing off the computer's ability to figure out what a horse looks like. So if you can hit play on the video, you might recognize a similarity between this video and what we can now do with DALL-E and Midjourney and all of these image generation models. So here, I've started off with a very small picture of a horse. I've cut out the blue circle, and the model is sampling completion. So it's saying, in painting, that's what the horse might look like. As I increase the cutouts, the diversity of the samples goes up, showing its ability to kind of know what horses look like, but also to generate multiple plausible answers. And then as I keep doing this, it shows even more diversity. Some people might call this creativity. And I can, control it. So I can put in some white pixels to lift or black pixels to bring down the back, and some white pixels to lift the leg, and so on. Should happen soon. So as I said, this was basically state of the art back then, and it's actually crazy to think that in 10 years we've gone from this to where we're at now. DALL-E 3 was just announced yesterday. I don't know if you saw. OpenAI released the latest version, and you can basically talk to the computer, say, you can have a conversation, and through that conversation, an image is generated. There are companies that are working on video, on audio, music, and so on. So it's like a crazy time for this space, and it's super exciting. And I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thank you for saying that. I mean, before we go any further, I just wanted to, because you did your PhD in computer science, in machine learning, or focused around it, and this has been part of your career. And I just think it would be interesting to this audience to understand a little bit your motivations, because the world has transformed from our perspective. But how is it that you ended up in what at the time was a very specific field?
Yeah, so basically my personal story is that I started programming when I was a teenager, and by the time I went to uni, I realized that there were things that you can do with computers, and basically everyone knows what they are. And then there's a whole bunch of things that we know we want to do, but we can't get the computer to do. For instance, like we can't get it to drive a car, or to dance, or to talk, or to understand language, and so on and so on. And AI as a field, as a scientific field, was the field of trying to figure out answers to that question. How do we get that to work? And there's a scientific curiosity behind it as well, because all of the culture that we see around us, in terms of arts and language and music, films, all these buildings, like our whole lives, are the result of a particular organ that we have, our brains. And this brain is different to brains of other animals, and that creates all of these things. So there's a scientific curiosity around what on earth is this thing doing? Like, what are the principles that govern the working of the brain? So AI, for me, was one, how can I get computers to do cooler things? And two, how is it that our brains do the cool things that they do? And they come together. Something that I wasn't interested in then, and I'm still really not interested in that much, is, turning these into products, per se. I'm way more interested in the science of it.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. It's really interesting and also inspiring. Okay, so we come to Kadine now. So Kadine, you have had an incredible career across, so many different fields, very interdisciplinary, very appropriate for this audience. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've worked with Web3, digital fashion, of course, NFTs, and the metaverse. And you have been in the space of architecture, data visualization, virtual tours, immersive worlds, and partnered with everyone from major fashion brands to technology and consulting firms. I'd love for you to share in your own words what you do and how you even begin to define it when you're working on things.
Thank you so much. It's a real thrill to be here today with such incredible colleagues. And thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share some of the work that we're doing. So I'm the Chief Metaverse Officer at Artificial Rome. Prior to that, I was at Yahoo, where I was exec producer on some very early metaverse experiences, including Metaverse Fashion Week and Metaverse Music Festival, where I was taking pop stars and DJs, dressing them in artifacts, garments before they sold to Nike for billions of dollars. I set up my own studio, The Immersive Kind, back in 2016, working with artists and fashion designers and NFT creators, exploring new narratives around how we can experience art and fashion in the virtual world. I then went to work at Accenture in their Metaverse Continuum team, and now I'm at Artificial Rome in Berlin, where I'm an executive producer and art director, working on creating immersive experiences for brands, including Nike, Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, and we're just fresh from delivering a Web3 experience with Glenn Martins from Diesel, which launched yesterday at Milan Fashion Week. So I've been using AI and artificial intelligence in my practice, and I'm just fresh from London Fashion Week, where we've produced an AI runway. Can we show the video, please? If it's possible. And I did an open call calling out to artists, to invite them to send in their work. And we assembled artists from around the world to create an AI fashion runway. This is one of the videos. Do we have any sound on this? But this is one of the videos that we created using Midjourney. Working with the fashion photographer Jacques de Kuka with my fashion archive. We were able to bring all of these images together to create behind the scenes and a runway experience that is completely powered by artificial intelligence. None of the models exist in the real world.
None of the models?
None of the models exist in the real world. None of the garments are real. Everything that you're seeing is made using AI and artificial intelligence. And there's a brownie point for anyone that can spot me on the runway. So thank you. If we could switch to the next video now. I just wanted everybody to see how we're using AI to explore new narratives around how we experience fashion in the virtual world. In addition to that, I wanted to showcase the Legacy of Tomorrow, which is a AAA game experience that I built with my team at Artificial Rome in Berlin. We're a studio of producers, creative technologists, and art directors.
People around the globe gathered to experience a new chapter of the metaverse fashion week.
Previously on projects in
Over
Decentraland,
Spatial, and our new platform,
and wanted to move the
Soil.
dial forward. So this is what we produced using
In this instance,
AI
joining an
and
otherworldly
Unreal Engine
photorealistic
technology.
environment.
I brought together the Fabricant whole studios,
Legacy
my
of
studio, The
Tomorrow
Immersive
is a
Kind.
visionary,
And we
immersive
brought
experience.
collections from Alta onto
Created with the Unreal
a AAA gaming
engine.
environment powered
This
by
experience
MetaHumans.
features high-resolution
These
pixel
collections
streaming,
that you're seeing here on the screen
ensuring
are
seamless
from
gameplay
galleries and institutions
and an
around the
outstanding
world
amount of
that have been
details
digitized
of the
for the first
garments.
time. And we got to
The bright
bring
landscape
the
acts
cloth
as a frame,
simulation and the motion
focusing the
together
attention on the garments.
using tools such as
Celebrating
NVIDIA
cultural heritage and
and
modern
working
fashion in a
with Art
virtual
Studio
space.
to really move the dial, I think, in
A
terms
fully
of
integrated
how we
chat
can
system
experience
and a
fashion
variety
in a
of
3D
animated
world
gestures
and
help the
inside virtual
avatars to
spaces. And
interact
in my
and
experience,
communicate
I
with
want to
each
have the
other
best
during the
clothes when I
show.
show up in these virtual environments and spaces. And I also wanted to have the opportunity to assemble the Fabricant,
of Tomorrow
Metatara,
isn't
and
only an
Alta
ultimate fashion
as the
experience,
designers of the
featuring
future
groundbreaking
that are
graphics
really
and sound
creating
design,
collections that
but
you can
also
wear
a
on your digital
visionary
persona,
glimpse into
but
the
also
future
on
of the
your
immersive
on your
experience.
physical body. And this was dropped during Metaverse Fashion Week, and has since gone on to win multiple awards, including a Cannes Lion recently, which we're super proud of. So my role is very much about exploring technology and using it in my creative practice with some of the best designers, the best artists that are at the forefront of culture and are exploring new ways to think about how we can create art and using the tools of our time to express ourselves. The next video I'm going to share with you shows me hanging on the wall of the gallery. This is my union avatar with bunny boots on that we created for Chinese New Year. Can you turn the sound up for this if it's possible, please? And then the NFTs and the digital images on the wall were of me. So we've used AI and machine learning, training those images so that those images look like me, because I wanted to show myself wearing AI fashion in this way. None of those clothes exist in the real world. I exist, I'm a real person, but I'm using artificial intelligence to reimagine what I might look, experiencing these sorts of digital garments. So this has just been on tour at Artset Gallery, where we brought it to London Fashion Week, and is another, I guess, opportunity, I think, to push the dial in terms of AI and how we can experience it in the virtual world. So I've created that using Midjourney, DALL-E, and Unreal Engine. So
Amazing.
yeah, a number of different technologies have been applied, and I like to mix it up when I'm creating these experiences.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I think so much of the narrative in conversation right now is about generative AI, and to see us coming back to the futures of the metaverse and where that could land is really important, and also it's beautiful work, so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I have many more questions for you, because you also lecture at the RCA, and I also think it would be interesting to unpack more artificial realm and, you know, kind of what the future of creative agencies is, so we can come back to that. But just to round it off, Ben Ditto is a creative director living and working in London. His work really spans the spectrum of disciplines: moving image, CGI, creative coding, branding, print experience. I know you like using Instagram in various formats, and sort of the power of storytelling really features a lot in your work across platforms. And you are no longer with Days Beauty, but you were a founder, and you're now working with robotics, which I'm really interested to hear more about. So tell us a little bit about your work right now.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben Ditto, as has been said. So I work on lots of things with lots of different clients, mostly kind of fashion and music clients and beauty. But recently, I mean, for the last sort of 6 years, I've been really interested in artificial intelligence as it applies to culture. But my history with technology is that I got my first computer in like 1982 and started coding when I was really young with my dad. You know, this is like the very beginnings of home computing. I then started a print publishing company, so I've had this sort of paradoxical relationship with like old technologies and tangible technologies, and then new technologies for my whole career. I've just been made creative director of this new company called Yaya Labs, which is run by people from SingularityNet and Hanson Robotics. So Hanson Robotics owns Suhair robot, who is a very famous robot with a bald head and a black see-through back of the head. She's like a UN ambassador, and often on sort of talk shows and that kind of thing. Her sister Desdemona, I'm her kind of manager, wrangler, Svengali kind of thing. But it's an opportunity to explore what does it mean to create an AI celebrity, or not a robotic celebrity, because that's Suhair, an AI celebrity that currently has that body. So getting to work with a lot of data scientists and very good roboticists is amazing for me, who, with the upbringing I've had. This is an artwork we made recently. That's Desdemona without her face on the right. And on the left is an artwork we did which shows all the different layers that go into creating an interactive human robot. So a lot of those are current AI technologies. So things like, if you make a robot say something, what translates the words into the mouth movements? What's the thing that listens to what you say and, sends it off to the cloud to be processed to an answer? Which large language model you use? All of those things. So when you sort of interact with a humanoid robot like that, it feels uncanny, but then when you unpack it, it becomes really uncanny, because you start to think, is this what we are? Do you know what I mean? Are we like, layers of different programming? The thing that we're working on at the moment with SingularityNet is the next level of AI. Their mission is to achieve artificial general intelligence, and the next layer of that, they think, is knowledge graphs and neural symbolic reasoning as a layer over...
Can I just pause you? Can
Sure.
you just give a little bit of an unpacking of artificial general intelligence
Sure.
and singularity?
At the moment, most of what we interact with are generative models, generative artwork models like DALL-E and Midjourney, or large language models like ChatGPT. A large language model, I don't want to be hugely reductive, but I will be, is that you put in a query and it responds using the next likely word, essentially. Is that, yeah. Yep. Thanks, I can get away with that. So it has the it has the illusion of sentience or intelligence, but it's really guessing what the next word would be as a response to that query. And it does appear to be intelligent, but it's not. The thing that it lacks is any knowledge. It doesn't know what it's saying. So that's why you get lots of kind of discrepancies and factual inaccuracies in large language model responses. What the people I work with think is that the next level to that will be applying knowledge graphs, that is facts that people agree with. Like Wikipedia could be visualized as a series of, interconnected circles, for example. If you apply that to a large language model, which is a lot more complicated than it sounds, you start to have an AI which is based on reason and fact. That you then get into what is truth and reason and fact, and that's another, ontology and epistemology and all of these other philosophical areas. But that's what people are currently looking at, as far as I can see. That's another step on the way towards artificial general intelligence, which is rather than a tool that solves one problem, it would be something that acts like a human does, in that you can ask it something and it would use its intelligence to solve that in a range of different ways. So, more of a simulacra of human intelligence rather than a tool, which is what an LLM is. This is just a few bits of other work I've done. This is a Louis Vuitton project where they gave us these trunks. It was his 200th anniversary of his birth, and it was during COVID, so I thought, well, 200 years ago, what was happening in Paris where he was born? There was a cholera pandemic, so we covered this trunk in horse blood agar, and then bioengineered. We used CRISPR-Cas9 technology to hack cholera bacteria to glow, and then we printed the Louis Vuitton pattern in that cholera bacteria. So that's horse blood and cholera for Louis Vuitton, which, that was fun. This was Lil Michaela. She's like an avatar celebrity who some of you may have heard of, and this was the first time she appeared on a magazine cover. That was a Wired issue called Contamination. It was Italian Wired, I think about 7 or 8 years ago. And that was kind of, I like to introduce these things into popular culture. That was an example of that. This was Days Beauty, Kylie Jenner, where we used a generative adversarial network trained on beauty looks to make the beauty looks for a cover shoot with Kylie Jenner. She liked it a lot and ended up putting those pictures in her office, which you can see on the right. But I think more importantly, that introduces to sort of millions of people that aspect of AI which they wouldn't know or care about, by making it sort of shocking and unsettling and interesting, and placing it with a celebrity like that. You take it out of the realm of kind of the sort of the bubble that we can exist in, and you put it into really popular culture and see what comes back, which I like doing. And the same with the 1975. This was an early GPT-3 thing where we trained it on Zen sayings. We made this like fake digital detox that you can go to get off technology, and we made it really, really, really technologically based as a sort of irony. But it chucked out these dystopian kind of Zen sayings, and nobody really knew where they were coming from. But I liked that it would throw out like 1,000, and of those 1,000, like 20 of them would be actually really good, like really good. So yeah, that's me. That's I'm on Instagram and Discord and Telegram. I like to use social media as a broadcasting platform. So my background's print publishing and magazines, but I love to use Instagram as a magazine, which I control. I like that medium because it's very flexible. Like you can post film and text and audio and live stream and blah blah blah. Same with Discord and Telegram. There you go. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question on the robot. How did you decide on the name and gender?
I didn't. It was the name, the gender of the robot. The robot's made by David Hansen, who is originally a Disney animatronic artist. So he's an amazing roboticist, but with an artistic background. He modeled Suhair and Desdemona on his partners, I think, or relatives, or people who are close to him. So that's where those faces and where the faces come from. The name Desdemona, Ben Goertzel, who runs SingularityNet, knows that, but it's a Shakespearean name. There is a reason for it. We've argued a lot about whether or not we should change it, and I think it's, when something's a bit annoying and weird, it's like, well, just keep it because people will talk about it and remember it.
Okay, I talked about it. Okay, so the next question is actually for you, Ali, because I think it's incredible to have this range of like evolution of technology and systems, and then various layers of application and iteration. And you said that you're most interested in the science of how these technologies are evolving. And I'm not going to ask you to open up the future for us, but I am really curious, as we get to these conversations about what is human intelligence, what is machine intelligence. The last session was all about this concept of design intelligence, which is wrapped up into so many questions around creativity, empathy, feeling. How do you approach that in your work? And I mean, whatever you can share in terms of what you are working on, how do you see these systems evolving to, from a research perspective?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say is that, everything that I will say now is not canon. People disagree on these notions, and there's healthy debate and unhealthy debate going on about it. So even, what is intelligence and what is general intelligence? These are things that people have been discussing for years, and they continue to discuss it. So for instance, intelligence could be defined as doing something that's useful, and general intelligence could be defined as doing many things that are useful. One system that does many things that are useful. And it's definitely true that we're building systems that are more and more general. Therefore, you might consider that they're going towards AGI. But it's also true that these systems are very far from human-level general intelligence, let's say. So for instance, everyone's talking about image generation and language generation today, but we don't have robots that can walk up and down these steps as well as we do. We don't have systems that can watch a YouTube video and understand what's going on inside it. We don't have systems that can drive a car still. And we don't have systems that can cook. These are very simple tasks that are still outside the realm of possibility. And just one other thing that connects to this question, but also what Ben was saying is, you asked, is this how we work? Is this how human brains work? I was surprised to find that, about 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we used to look at clocks and we used to think that that's how brains work. And in fact, that's why people used to have clocks in their living rooms. It was a sign of technology and a sign of, marveling at the complexity of the human brain. And, we did make really impressive things with clockwork. We could compute the time, obviously, but we could also compute the positions of the stars and so on better than humans could. So in some sense, they were more intelligent than us. But now we don't look at them as models for the brain. Like, we understand their limitations. And I think there's a real possibility that, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we'll look back at our current technology and we'll say, yeah, they were really cool. They did generate language that looked really real, but it was for sure missing a big component. Now, this question of whether are we there yet or are we really far away, researchers disagree on this aggressively. There's some people who have spent their whole lives on this topic that think we are 6 months away, and there are some people who have spent their whole lives on this topic who think we're like 200 years away. And that's part of why it's so fun to be in that space for me, trying to get to that answer.
Right. I just read Mustafa Suleiman's book where he talks about once something is acceptable, it goes from being AI to being just software, and I'm sure that's how. But my question is, right now, in terms of your actual work, what is of interest to you in terms of accomplishing as sort of a next step with these technologies?
Yeah, so from my perspective, the biggest low-hanging fruit that we haven't yet been able to tackle is video understanding. And you can think of this in a number of different ways. If you think of a cat or a mouse or a dog, one of its primary sensations is through its eyes. So it looks at the world, and by looking at the world, it learns so much. It learns about how things move, who's friendly, who's not friendly, what's dangerous, what's not dangerous, what food is, and so on. There's a wealth of information there, and this is just from raw video without any text or any annotation to it. Currently, none of the systems that we interact with and we're excited by are trained on videos. They're trained on just text. So there's a certain kind of spatial understanding that you can get from videos. But also, if you think of, for instance, YouTube as a corpus, or the body of films that we've made, it's so much more than just the text in those videos. There's so much more going on. So I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more of in the immediate future. Now, personally, for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been focusing on the topic of AI for science. So this is a very different take on the topic where you say, well, we're building these tools, they're very powerful. Can we use them to understand aspects of the universe that we humans can't tackle with our own brains? So for instance, we're using machine learning to model the way atoms interact with each other at the level of quantum physics. And the idea is that if we can model this very well, we can make predictions about the properties of new materials. And if we can do that, we can design new materials that are better, cheaper, safer in many ways. So better batteries, solar cells, better medicine, concrete even, fertilizer. These are things that affect our day-to-day lives. If we had ways of simulating their behavior, we could design them much more quickly and much more cheaply. So that's what I'm working on, which is a very different angle.
Wow, thank you. It's so interesting. I could ask a million more questions, but I think it actually leads back to you is, we saw a lot of stuff which wasn't real. And yesterday I was speaking to Marcus Dusortoy, who's a mathematics professor, and he was talking about people just getting really angry when they see like a really nice painting that they really liked and felt really moved by, and then they found out it was made by machine learning, and then they just felt cheated. So how are you dealing with this in your work? How do you consider, and how are people reacting to it?
Yeah, this is a really great question, and I think one that we'll be continuing to debate for a long time. I think, within our studio, we're really interested in exploring new technology and emerging technologies and how it can be guided by human beings and by, creators and artists. So we're a team of producers and art directors, and we're using tools like Midjourney. We're using tools like Unreal Engine to create 3D worlds and experiences and, supercharge content for some of the biggest brands on the planet. The big project that we're very much immersed in at the moment is for Diesel, as I alluded to earlier on, which will run on a pixel streaming platform. We'll invite people to come in as an avatar. Owners of the NFT will be able to unlock exclusive content and immersive experiences that we've brought to life inside this environment. It will also be globally in stores in Japan, in the USA, and also in London. I'm really interested in merging the virtual world with the real world and creating hybrid experiences. I mentioned to you earlier on our call this morning that during London Pride, I took over one of the biggest out-of-home screens in Europe and linked it up to Metaverse Pride in Decentraland and in Spatial. So I'm really interested in how we can mix the 3D world and the virtual worlds with physical, spaces and activations. Can you say what Decentraland is? Decentraland is an AI, Ethereum-based blockchain metaverse platform. I've built a UFO, as you do, inside Decentraland, and you can find it online. It's a 3D world that's powered by the Ethereum blockchain. You can also go into Legacy of Tomorrow, which is live. We've left the servers running. If you want to go in and experience our work on Legacy, we're leaving it open for the London Design Festival. You can go in as an avatar. You can collect the fashion. You can shop and wear those garments on your avatar. And then I'm also really interested in working with artists that are using tools like Midjourney and DALL-E to create and unlock fashion from the future. So, for example, I've been working with Kevin Abanto's studio in Peru to use AI to reimagine what the high street of the future might look like, or what the concept store of the future might look like, completely reimagining, the future of public spaces and how we might be able to shop. And I think, what's really interesting to me is putting these tools in the hands of creators so that they can use them to make magic. And I think throughout the history of time, artists have always picked up, even when we were painting in caves, artists have always used the tools that are around them, and I see these tools as enhancing our practice, not taking over how we create and experience and make, but being a tool that we can use as part of our practice. So as part of the design process within our studio, we're often drawing in hand and using charcoal. We have a whole team of artists that are drawing in hand, but also then a team that will take it into a different dimension using tools like Midjourney. There are a number of different processes that we will use as part of the design process.
So for your studio, when you think about the future or the present of a creative agency or a design studio, how much of that is actual programmers and software engineers versus people who come from a more creative background?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I think there'll be a need for creativity. That's my response to that question. Obviously, being able to use these tools, being able to apply them in your practice, will give you an advantage. So I always say that to my students, and to experiment, but also making sure that we're mindful around how we use these tools and applications, and that there's thought in that. But within our studio, we have a whole team of technologists, of directors, of developers, coders, that are all using these tools and applications to create experiences, but they are all guided by human beings that know how to apply these tools to make an experience come to life, and hopefully make people sit back and go, that was it, that's incredible and really beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say something on that? I think it's really interesting what you were saying about your friend seeing a painting and feeling cheated, and it reminds me of when you would meet people who'd met on people who'd met online 15 years ago, and people would look down on it and be like, oh, that's a weird thing to do, meet somebody and have a relationship with somebody you've met online. Actually, the two most interesting things I've seen recently generated by AI, one was an account called Inhumanity Chamber. It's a person in Poland who prompt engineers these things which are exceptionally beautiful, like they're exquisite, and there's no way that the human mind on its own could make them. And for me, that they're creatures and biological forms, and it's pure prompt engineering by somebody really interesting working with current technology. And to me, that's what is exquisite about this stuff. The other interesting thing was we got our robot to write a poem based on a one-line Keats prompt for an event the other day, and she wrote this incredible poem. It is definitely comparable to any human poem, but that's gone through a load of data scientists, do you know what I mean, and me and various other people to sort of pick it out of all of the different options, decide which language models we're using, choose where she's appearing. So it's collaborative. All of these things are collaborative, and I think that the illusion that AI on its own is going to also, these things are only beautiful as perceived by humans until we design machines that perceive aesthetics and beauty and have their own feelings. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If I don't think it's beautiful and it doesn't move me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think I'll say something controversial. I know in the last session we talked a lot about empathy as part of what design intelligence should be, and there's a lot of conversations around that in this moment. I think there's sort of this disconnect in assuming that as we have more and more machine learning and AI becomes more sort of integrated into creativity, we somehow forget that empathy should exist. And it's sort of, for me, that is always going to be a conversation, a collaboration across disciplines.
Well, the vast majority of what's produced by AI is mulch. The vast majority of what's produced by Midjourney, DALL-E, large language models, the internet's full of it now. It's suffering from system collapse because there's so much just nonsense out there. Just because AI can generate lots of things and just because people can use them, it's like when Spark started, Spark AR for Instagram, you can make these incredible AR things. How many really beautiful ones have you seen? 10? Do you know what I mean? Anybody can do it, it's free. But there's about 10 really, really beautiful things, and that's a signifier that this stuff isn't coming to take over and swamp us with aesthetic beauty. Do you know what I mean? It's
right. And I also think taking risks. So what you've done, what you're doing with creating robots, pushing the boundaries of what they look like. There's going to be questions asked around it, but I think it's a powerful moment to take risks, as you guys do in your work. And same for regulation and whatever. I think I meant to open it up for questions because someone made a sign at me, so I will do that. Yes.
My question is for Ali. So I know that you are an artist as well as a scientist. I was just in your exhibition last year seeing your beautiful work. My question for you is, as an artist and scientist, what do you think about the subject of authenticity in art and AI and kind of design world and AI?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really big topic, and I'm an amateur artist and definitely not an expert in the concept of authenticity, but kind of relating your question to the previous conversation, I'm reminded of the advent of photography. So when photography became a thing, you know, artists at the time were threatened by it, and they saw it either as inauthentic painting or they saw it as something that was going to destroy painting because it's too powerful. And it's interesting that kind of neither of those two turned out to be the case. So photography eventually established itself as a legitimate art form. It actually took a surprisingly long amount of time. It took about 80 years before the first photography exhibition in France. So that's like multiple generations. It's more than a lifetime. And also, it, in a certain way, many would argue, liberated painting from realism, right? It's what allowed us, arguably, to go into modern art and into Impressionism and so on. At the same time, though, it changed portrait painting, and portrait painting became something that was largely replaced by photography, I would say. So, yeah, going back to the authenticity point, I just think it's a new tool. There's a wonderful artist, Scott Eaton, who uses AI to make art, and he's based in London. And he said that for him, AI was like a medium. It was like oil paint or watercolor. It's a new medium. I do art with that new medium. And then there's just so many ways you can remix it. You know, I've made kind of analog paintings based on images that I've made with a computer. So I made an image with a computer, I've painted that image myself, and that was actually in the exhibition you saw last year. I don't know if you noticed. So, I mean, that's just one example of it. There's so many ways you can play with these things. And then I just want to quickly introduce back into the conversation also that creativity and design obviously isn't just about the visual form. You know, it can also be in so many things. It's about problem solving, right? It could be about problem solving. And just this morning, I was reading a paper about a very simple task called the alternative use task. So you present humans or computers with an object, and you say, what kinds of things could this object be used for? And it turns out that computers are actually very good at this, perhaps better than the average human, but not as good as the best humans. So it's just that. It's like a very simple task. It's not visual at all, but it kind of shows off some of these questions.
Who is the best human? What is
So they were measuring it precisely. So they were saying that they were looking for diversity of answers, but also answers that were high quality. I don't know how they were measuring quality of answers. And they were saying that most humans have diverse but low quality answers. The best computers have diverse and high quality, and the best humans have diverse, even higher quality. So, yeah.
Okay, I think we have 3 best humans here. I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, you spoke a lot about how creatives can use AI. However, AI is, if I understand it, trained on millions of images and billions of words created by people. So if somebody says, show me a chair that looks like it was designed by Apple or Norman Foster or Nike, you get back these images. What does that say about intellectual property and ownership going forward? Is that really yours, or is it a collaboration with people who have not necessarily agreed to collaborate?
I mean, just briefly, I'm sure everybody has something to say about this. Ethically, I think that, you know, ethically using copyrighted stuff as training data is probably unethical, but at the same time, that's what our brains are doing all the time. Everything that I produce is an output of the things that have been put into me. So, you know, I haven't been paying for the license of every film I've watched, but every film I watch has inspired me. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that. Do you know what I mean? I think that training an entire, you know, massive database on Getty Images stuff without paying them or the artists is unethical, but it's not a clear line. Do you know what I mean? That's my view.
Yeah, I echo that. Well said, Ben. I think to your point, there needs to be regulation, and I'm sure that we could debate this for hours. And there are rules and laws that will be brought in very soon. I'm very aware of what's going on in Hollywood at the moment with friends and colleagues that are working in the movie industry. So to your point, I think that there are regulation and laws that will be coming in, and I echo Ben's point around the need to protect artists and their work, but equally I don't think we can put a pause on innovation.
There is a conclusion in terms of all of the layers of conversation and each of your experiences is that we do need to lean into polymathic thinking, creativity, and experiences. So thank you for sharing your very inspiring stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.